Welcome, students, to Unit 7.4, where we will be discussing the remaining three senses of smell, taste, and touch. So the first sense we're going to talk about is the sense of touch. Now, we all know, or we should know by now, that when we touch something, like with our finger or with our foot, or if we brush against something with our arm, then the sensory neurons in whatever part of whatever appendage we touch with, the sensory neurons are going to send that message to the spinal cord, to the interneurons in the spinal cord, and then that message will be sent up to the thalamus in the brain and then redirected to the parietal lobe, where our sensory cortex is located. Now, this is really important for the processing of pain. And pain is the very unpleasant sensory and emotional experience that may result from tissue damage, one's thoughts or beliefs, or environmental stressors. So like there's emotional pain, there's physical pain. Pain receptors send nerve impulses to the somatosensory and limbic areas of the brain where the impulses become pain sensations. So the somatosensory, again, that's part of the parietal lobe, and then the limbic areas such as the amygdala and hypothalamus are activated in the brain, which gives us an emotional pain. All right. Pain is very, very important for our survival. If not for pain, then we wouldn't know when certain parts of our body were damaged and might need our attention to be healed or to be fixed. So pain is very, very important for the perpetuation of our species. Have you ever noticed that when you have a headache, sometimes you'll forget because something else has absorbed your attention? Or let's say you kind of have a stomach ache, but then your classmate says, "Hey, did you study for the quiz today?" And then your stomach pain immediately goes away because you're too focused or you're too worried about the quiz. Well, what is happening here is a little thing called the gate control theory, and it can help out in this. And another reason for it is that you are taking a lot of things into your brain all at once. You're taking your environment into your brain, your memories, your emotions are impacting your conscious awareness. All right, so when you experience pain is going to typically distract you from all those other things so that you can focus your attention on that area of your body so you can survive or heal. Okay? But sometimes our brain or the interneurons in our spine block the reception of pain for other reasons. Now let's explore that. When your interneurons block pain from reaching the brain, this is referred to as the gate control theory. This is non-painful nerve impulses compete with pain impulses in trying to reach the brain. This in turn creates a bottleneck or neural gate that limits the number of impulses that can be transmitted. So shifting attention or rubbing an injured area may increase the passage of non-painful impulses and decrease the passage of painful impulses. Have you ever burned your finger on the stove and then put that burning finger under cold water, running cold water? Your finger, which was just burned, is now going to feel cold and cool, and it's actually going to feel much more comforting. The reason that is because the pleasure receptors are going to outweigh the pain receptors, and it's going to make your finger feel better. Smell. The smell sense is known as olfaction. Olfaction is the sense of smell. That is its definition. Now, in the back of your nasal cavity, as you can see in the image here, right there to be specific, you can see, I'm going to erase this here, you can see that there are about 6 million smell receptors, olfactory receptor sites. And these olfactory cells are located in two 1-inch square patches of tissue in the uppermost part of the nasal passage. The olfactory cells are covered with mucus, which is what molecules dissolve into. As these molecules dissolve, they stimulate the underlying olfactory cells, which trigger nerve impulses that travel to the brain. So, if the smell of this rose, let's say here's your nose, there's your nostril, the smell of this rose goes into the nostril, goes to the back of the nasal cavity where it stimulates the olfactory hairs, which we see here, as the smell particles break down into the mucus that we just discussed, it's passed up to the olfactory cell, to olfactory nerve fiber, and then to the olfactory bulbs of the cerebral cortex. And then, as you can see, it's passed directly along to the limbic system of the brain. Because smells are passed to the limbic system of the brain, this can elicit very strong memories because of the amygdala portion of the limbic system. All right, smell is primitive, and this shows us that smell is primitive. Smell goes to the temporal lobe and to the limbic centers because it triggers memories. This enables more hunter-gatherers to remember which foods are healthy and which foods are poisonous, and it helps them remember where to find those sources of sustenance so they can continue to survive. Some other reasons for smell is to intensify the taste of food. As we've talked about, there is sensory interaction between smell and taste, and we're going to talk about that in more detail later. And then also, smell can warn us of potentially dangerous food. So if foods smell more bitter, then there's a higher chance that they'll be poisonous, as opposed to foods that smell sweet, which have more calories and are better for us typically. So like we said earlier, we mentioned the concept sensory interaction. Sensory interaction is the principle that one sense may influence another, as when smell as when smell and food influence taste. So, for example, if you ever plug your nose or squeeze your nose and take a bite of an onion, you're really not going to taste the onion because the blockage of the nasal passageway traps that air in and you can't taste it. All right? It's kind of the same principle. If you've ever had a cold, then it's going to be a lot harder to taste your food because of the blockage of the nasal cavity due to buildup of mucus and other congestion. So pause the video for a few seconds, look at this chart to get a better understanding of sensory interaction between taste and smell, and we'll go into more detail in class. Other senses, now these are not the basic 5 senses, but other senses that are pertinent are the kinesthesis, which is our system for sensing the position and movement of individual body parts. So if you hold your hand above your head and you're aware of it, that is your kinesthetic sense. You're aware of where your hand is and what it's doing. Now this is in contrast to the vestibular sense, which is just the mere sense of the body movement and positions. It includes our sense of balance. All right, so our vestibular sense is facilitated by the semicircular canals in our ear as well as the cerebellum in the back of our brain. All right, located in the inner ear, it gives you information on the position of your head. Motion sickness is believed to occur when your head is being bounced around, but your eyes see the objects in the distance as fairly steady. This confuses your semicircular canals, which can lead to dizziness and fatigue. All right, well, that is going to sum up Unit 7.4, which are the other senses, and I'll see you guys in class.